in Lagos State. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for joining us. Can you please unmute your device?
It is.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
We can hear you now. In your letter, you flagged several infractions by LASIEC, including the election timetable, the lack of transparency, and some other issues. How concerning are these issues for you and for the coming election?
Well, I think what's the first point of order, more or less, is the fact that we need to realize that local government elections are very important, significant elections in our democracy, and the level of seriousness with which we engage national elections is the same level of seriousness we need to use in engaging the local elections. And so, beginning from that point and point of call, it is quite worrisome that ahead of the local government elections in Lagos State, we are experiencing these levels of, one, inconsistency, two, lack of transparency when it comes to processes and the legal framework for the elections, and three, the disaffection even amongst political contenders or competitors in the elections. And the first part is the legal framework for the elections. I do know that as early as last year, there were engagements with the State Assembly on reviewing the Lagos State's electoral law for the election, the LASIEC law. And in that process that began last year, one effort that engages stakeholders, including political parties, civil society, and the media, in the process of the review of the law, so that when the law is subsequently passed, or when the bill is subsequently passed into law, everyone will be aware of the provisions. It's quite unfortunate that we are in a situation where a law was amended and there is no publicization of the law. There is no engagement of stakeholders when it comes to the new legal framework for the elections. And so this in itself is one, the troubling part. The second is issues around timeline for elections. The law is clear. In fact, if you follow the Supreme Court decision on Rivers State local government and local elections, and even the Supreme Court decision of last year, there is an ardent call to states to look and state and independent electoral commissions to ensure that there is strict adherence to the legal framework. One, we have the Constitution, then we have the Electoral Act. Because the Electoral Act in sections 150, what it did was basically providing that local government elections would, by virtue of that act, be conducted in line with the procedure for elections highlighted in the Electoral Act.
Okay.
And so that requirement on timeline, requirement of procedure is a mandate on state independent electoral commission to comply. And so when we see LASIEC taking a different posture, it raises a bigger question on its sincerity to conduct transparent elections. And I think both parties, how political parties engage the process.
All right, so Cynthia, I need to ask this. Now, it seems concerning because all these seem to be at variance with the provision of the Electoral Act 2022. Do you see a deliberate attempt to circumvent the rules in favor of some perceived interests?
I think what we've had is that culture of impunity, where it is easier to without go and ensure that there's compliance. Secondly, I also think that when it comes to local government elections, there's a lot of political interest, and those interests unfortunately undermine the independence and integrity of the state's independent electoral commission, and which is why, as an organization, we've consistently worked and pushed for strengthening of SIEC so that they are independent, autonomous, and can operate without undue influence from political parties, especially the ruling party in the state. One was inconsistent that ruling parties at state level look for ways to undermine independence of SIEC, but also interfere with the process so that they are put at an advantage and creating an equal chance to compete.
Okay.
And so when you ask me, I don't have all the answers, but what indicators are showing is that when the laws are skewed, when the compliance level is weak, and when there is no transparency, most times there is a likelihood that breaches or those lacunas would favor the ruling party in the state. It's unfortunate that local government elections have become this process where transparency is almost non-existent,
Okay.
and where opposing parties, other candidates, struggle to understand the rules and compete fairly. That is not how democracy ought to operate.
All right. Thank you so much, Cynthia Malu, for sharing this with us. This is a continuing conversation, and we hope that we'll be able to bring you more in the subsequent bulletins to talk about this. But it was nice talking to you at this time.